What happens when a pop star's ego gets so massive that even the most patient talk show host in Hollywood reaches their breaking point? Tonight, we're diving into one of the most shocking celebrity meltdowns ever caught on live television, where Miley Cyrus turned what should have been a simple promotional interview into an absolute disaster that ended with security being called and cameras cutting to commercial. Before we get into this wild story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling me which celebrity you think has the biggest ego in Hollywood. Trust me, you're going to want to stick around for this one, because what unfolds is absolutely unbelievable. It was a typical Tuesday night taping at the Jimmy Kimmel live studio. The audience was buzzing with excitement, ready for another entertaining show. Jimmy had been hosting for over 2 decades, and he'd seen it all. Difficult guests, awkward moments, technical difficulties, you name it. But nothing, and I mean nothing, could have prepared him for what was about to unfold with Miley Cyrus. The show started normally enough. Jimmy delivered his monologue to the live audience, cracking jokes about current events and getting the crowd warmed up. Behind the scenes, everything seemed routine. The production crew was running through their usual pre-show checklist. Guests were getting their final touch-ups and makeup, and the band was tuning their instruments. Miley Cyrus was scheduled as the main guest that night, there to promote her latest album. She'd been on the show several times before, and while she was known for being a bit unpredictable, previous appearances had gone smoothly. The producers had no reason to expect anything different this time around. But from the moment Miley arrived at the studio that evening, something felt off. Multiple crew members later described her demeanor as hostile and demanding. She complained about everything from the temperature of her dressing room to the brand of water bottles provided. When a production assistant politely asked if she needed anything else, Miley reportedly snapped back with a string of insults that left the young woman visibly shaken. The makeup artist assigned to Miley had worked with countless celebrities over the years, but even she was taken aback by Miley's behavior. According to sources who were present, Miley criticized everything about the makeup setup, demanded that products be replaced with her own personal collection, and made several derogatory comments about the artist's skills. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. As showtime approached, Jimmy's team briefed him on the situation. They warned him that Miley seemed to be in a particularly difficult mood, but Jimmy, being the professional he is, decided to proceed as planned. He'd handled challenging guests before, and he was confident he could navigate whatever curveballs came his way. The show began, and Jimmy went through his opening segment without a hitch. The audience was responsive, laughing at all the right moments. Everything appeared normal from the viewer's perspective. But backstage, Miley was becoming increasingly agitated. She was pacing back and forth in her dressing room, muttering complaints about everything from the show's format to Jimmy's interviewing style. When it came time for her segment, Jimmy introduced Miley with his usual charm and enthusiasm. The band played her entrance music, and she walked out onto the stage with what appeared to be a confident smile. The audience erupted in applause, completely unaware of the drama that had been unfolding behind the scenes. Jimmy stood up from his desk to greet her, extending his hand for a handshake. But instead of accepting the gesture graciously, Miley barely acknowledged him. She gave him a limp handshake that lasted all of 2 seconds before pulling away and plopping down in the guest chair with an attitude that screamed entitlement. "Welcome back to the show, Miley," Jimmy said, trying to maintain his upbeat energy despite the cold reception. "It's always great to have you here." Miley's response was far from what anyone expected. Instead of thanking him or expressing any gratitude for the platform, she rolled her eyes and said, "Yeah, well, I'm here, aren't I? Let's just get this over with." The audience fell silent. You could literally hear a pin drop in that studio. Jimmy's smile faltered for just a moment, but being the seasoned professional he is, he quickly recovered and tried to steer the conversation in a positive direction. "So tell us about your new album," Jimmy continued, his voice still friendly, but with a slight edge that keen observers might have picked up on. "I understand it's a very personal project for you." Miley shifted in her chair, crossing her arms defensively. "Look, Jimmy, I didn't come here to do some fake interview where we pretend everything is sunshine and rainbows. If you want to talk about my music, then talk about my music. Don't give me this surface-level nonsense." Jimmy blinked, clearly taken aback by her aggressive tone. The audience was still silent, sensing that something was seriously wrong. This wasn't the playful banter they'd come to expect from celebrity interviews. This felt hostile, uncomfortable, and completely inappropriate for a late-night talk show setting. "Okay," Jimmy said, his voice remaining calm despite the obvious tension. Let's dive deeper then. What inspired the themes on this album? What were you going through personally when you were writing these songs? Instead of appreciating his attempt to give her exactly what she'd asked for, Miley became even more confrontational. Oh, so now you want the real story? You want me to spill my guts for your entertainment? How original, Jimmy. Real groundbreaking journalism there. The sarcasm in her voice was cutting, and Jimmy's expression began to show signs of frustration. He'd been nothing but professional and accommodating. Yet, Miley was treating him like he was some amateur interviewer who didn't deserve her time. I'm just trying to give you the opportunity to share your art with the audience, Jimmy replied, his tone becoming slightly more firm. That's what we do here. We celebrate creativity and give artists a platform to connect with their fans. Miley let out a bitter laugh. Connect with fans, please. Half these people don't even know real music when they hear it. They just want whatever the radio tells them to like. Now, she was insulting his audience directly, and Jimmy could see some people in the crowd starting to shift uncomfortably in their seats. This was crossing a line that should never be crossed on a talk show. Guests might have bad days. They might be difficult to work with, but they don't insult the very people who support their careers. I think you might be underestimating the audience, Jimmy said, his voice taking on a slightly warning tone. These are music lovers who appreciate authenticity and talent. Authenticity? Miley scoffed. Don't lecture me about authenticity, Jimmy. I've been in this business since I was a kid. I know what real and fake looks like, and most of what passes for entertainment these days is complete garbage. Jimmy was now visibly struggling to maintain his composure. 20 years of hosting experience had taught him how to handle difficult situations. But Miley was pushing boundaries that few guests had ever dared to cross. She wasn't just being difficult. She was being openly disrespectful to him, his show, and his audience. Well, I hope our viewers will give your new music a chance and form their own opinions, Jimmy said, attempting once more to redirect the conversation towards something productive. But Miley wasn't finished. She leaned forward in her chair, her voice taking on an even more aggressive tone. You know what your problem is, Jimmy? You've been doing this fake nice guy act for so long that you actually believe it yourself. But I see right through it. This whole show is just manufactured happiness designed to sell advertising. The audience was now audibly uncomfortable. People were murmuring to each other, and you could see confusion and disappointment on their faces. They'd come expecting entertainment, not to witness a celebrity having a complete meltdown on live television. Jimmy's patience was wearing dangerously thin, but he made one final attempt to salvage the interview. Miley, I think maybe we should focus on your music. That's why you're here, right? To share your new songs with people who might enjoy them. Her response would prove to be the final straw that broke the camel's back. My music. Miley's voice dripped with contempt as she practically spat the words. You want to talk about my music? Fine. Let's talk about how your little network probably doesn't even deserve to have me on this pathetic excuse for a talk show. I could be anywhere right now, but instead I'm sitting here listening to you pretend like you actually care about art. Jimmy's jaw visibly tightened. For the first time in the interview, his professional mask began to slip. Miley, I've been nothing but respectful to you since you walked out here. I'm not sure what's gotten into you tonight, but this behavior is completely unacceptable. Unacceptable. Miley stood up from her chair, her voice rising to a level that made several audience members lean back in their seats. You want to know what's unacceptable? Having to come on these corporate puppet shows and pretend like everything is wonderful when the entire industry is corrupt from top to bottom. The studio fell into an eerie silence. Even the camera operators seemed frozen, unsure whether they should keep rolling or cut away. Jimmy remained seated behind his desk, but his knuckles were white as he gripped the edge of the surface. Sit down, Miley, Jimmy said firmly. We're live on television. Whatever personal issues you're dealing with, this isn't the place to work them out. Don't you dare tell me to sit down, Miley shot back, pointing an accusatory finger at him. I'm not some trained monkey here to perform for your amusement. I'm an artist, and artists don't take orders from corporate sellouts. Jimmy slowly stood up from behind his desk, his 6-foot frame towering over the stage. The audience could sense that something major was about to happen. This wasn't just an awkward interview anymore. This was turning into a full-blown confrontation between two very different personalities. Corporate sellout. Jimmy's voice remained controlled, but there was steel in it now. Miley, I've spent decades building this show, giving artists like you a platform to reach millions of people. I've treated every guest with dignity and respect, including you. Every single time you've been here. Dignity and respect. Miley laughed bitterly. Is that what you call this scripted nonsense? These pre-approved questions designed to make everyone look good and sell more records. There's nothing dignified about any of this. Those questions weren't scripted, Jimmy replied, his voice rising slightly. I was genuinely trying to learn about your creative process to give you a chance to share something meaningful with the audience. But instead, you've spent the last 10 minutes insulting me, my show, and everyone in this room. Miley began pacing back and forth across the stage, her movements erratic and aggressive. Maybe they needed to hear the truth for once. Maybe someone needs to tell them that most of what they consume as entertainment is garbage designed to keep them distracted and spending money. You know what, Miley? Jimmy's composure finally cracked. You're absolutely right about one thing. Someone does need to tell the truth here. So, let me be completely honest with you and everyone watching. This is not how a professional behaves. This is not how you treat people who are trying to help you succeed. The audience began to murmur more loudly. Some people were pulling out their phones, trying to capture what was clearly becoming a historic television moment. Others looked genuinely concerned, as if they were witnessing something they shouldn't be seeing. Help me succeed. Miley whirled around to face Jimmy directly. I don't need your help, Jimmy. I was successful before I ever set foot on this stage, and I'll be successful long after your little show gets canceled. My show getting canceled. Jimmy's voice took on a dangerous edge. Miley, this show has been on the air for over 20 years. We've hosted presidents, Nobel Prize winners, Oscar winners, and yes, musicians who actually appreciate the opportunity to connect with their fans. But in all that time, I've never had a guest show such complete disrespect for the process. Maybe that's because all your other guests were too scared to tell you the truth, Miley shot back. Maybe they were too worried about their precious careers to point out that this whole setup is a joke. Jimmy walked around his desk, moving closer to where Miley was standing. The physical distance between them was closing, and the tension in the room was becoming unbearable. You want to talk about careers, Miley? Let's talk about how you're destroying yours right now on live television in front of millions of people. I'm not destroying anything. Miley's voice reached a fever pitch. I'm showing everyone what authenticity looks like. I'm refusing to play along with this fake, sanitized version of celebrity culture that you represent. Authenticity. Jimmy's voice was incredulous. Is that what you call having a temper tantrum because someone asked you about your music? Is that what you call insulting an audience full of people who paid money to see a show? I call it honesty, Miley replied defiantly. Something that's apparently in short supply around here. Jimmy shook his head in disbelief. You know what's honest, Miley? What's honest is admitting that you came on this show tonight with an agenda. You didn't come here to promote your music or connect with fans. You came here looking for a fight, and I have no idea why. Maybe because I'm tired of pretending, Miley said, her voice becoming slightly quieter, but no less intense. Maybe because I'm sick of having to smile and nod and act grateful when the whole system is designed to exploit artists and feed meaningless content to the masses. Then why are you here? Jimmy asked pointedly. If you hate the system so much, if you think my show is meaningless, if you have such contempt for the audience, then why did you agree to come on? For the first time since the interview began, Miley seemed momentarily speechless. The question had clearly caught her off guard, and for just a second, her aggressive facade cracked slightly. She started, then stopped. I came here because my team said I had to, because apparently I need to keep playing the game even when the game is rigged. So you decided to take out your frustration with your team, with the industry, with whatever personal problems you're dealing with on me and on this audience. Jimmy's voice was filled with disbelief. Do you have any idea how selfish that is? Miley's face flushed red with anger. Selfish? You want to talk about selfish? What about profiting off other people's pain and calling it entertainment? What about turning real human emotions into content for your corporate overlords? Nobody here is profiting off your pain, Miley, Jimmy replied firmly. The only person causing pain in this room right now is you. You're hurting yourself. You're making everyone here uncomfortable. And you're embarrassing yourself on national television. I'm not embarrassed, Miley declared, though her voice wavered slightly. I'm finally being real for once in my life. This isn't real, Miley, Jimmy said, his voice becoming more compassionate despite his obvious frustration. This is you having some kind of breakdown and using my show as your personal therapy session. And I can't let you continue to disrespect everyone here while you work through whatever this is. Miley's eyes narrowed dangerously. You can't let me? Who do you think you are, Jimmy? You're just a talk show host. You're not my father. You're not my manager. And you're definitely not my friend. So don't stand there and lecture me about what I can and can't do. The words hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Jimmy stared at her for a long moment, and when he spoke again, his voice was quietly furious. You're absolutely right, Miley. I'm not your friend. Friends don't treat each other the way you've treated me tonight. And as for being just a talk show host, you're right about that, too. But this is my show, and these are my guests and my audience, and I have a responsibility to all of them. Your responsibility? Miley's voice dripped with sarcasm. What about your responsibility to showcase real artistry instead of manufactured pop culture nonsense? Jimmy had clearly reached his breaking point. His next words would change everything. You know what, Miley? Jimmy's voice cut through the tension like a blade. I've had enough. 20 years of hosting this show, and I've never met anyone with such a complete lack of respect for other people. You want to talk about real artistry? Real artists don't need to tear down everyone around them to feel important. Miley's face contorted with rage. Don't you dare question my artistry, you corporate puppet. I've forgotten more about music than you'll ever know. Maybe you have, Jimmy shot back, his patience completely exhausted. But you've also forgotten how to be a decent human being. You've forgotten that other people deserve basic respect, regardless of whether you think they're worthy of your time. Respect? Miley screamed, her voice echoing through the studio. Where was the respect when I was being forced to come on this joke of a show? Where was the respect when your producers told me I had to play nice and pretend everything was perfect? Nobody forced you to be here, Jimmy replied, his voice rising to match hers. You chose to come. You chose to promote your album, and you chose to turn what should have been a simple conversation into this disaster. That's it, Jimmy said, his voice suddenly deadly calm. We're done here. This interview is over. You can't end this interview, Miley snapped. I'm not finished talking. Yes, you are, Jimmy replied firmly. Security, please escort Miss Cyrus off the stage. The audience gasped audibly as 2 security guards appeared from the wings. Miley's eyes went wide with shock and fury. You're actually having me removed? This is unbelievable. Do you have any idea who I am? I know exactly who you are, Jimmy said, his voice carrying across the stunned studio. You're someone who forgot that success doesn't give you the right to treat people like garbage. You're making the biggest mistake of your career, Miley threatened, her voice shaking with rage. When people find out how you treated me tonight, your reputation will be destroyed. My reputation? Jimmy laughed bitterly. Miley, hundreds of people just watched you have a complete meltdown on live television. They saw you insult me, insult this show, and insult every single person in this audience. If anyone's reputation is destroyed tonight, it's not mine. As the security guards approached, Miley became even more unhinged. This is censorship. You're silencing me because I'm telling the truth about your pathetic industry. I'm not silencing you, Miley, Jimmy replied. I'm protecting everyone else from your tantrum. There's a difference between speaking truth and having a public breakdown. The guards gently but firmly began to escort Miley toward the exit. She continued shouting as they walked. You'll regret this, Jimmy. Everyone will see what kind of person you really are. I think they already have, Jimmy said quietly, but his words carried clearly through the studio microphones as Miley was led off stage, still yelling about artistic integrity and corporate corruption. Jimmy turned to face his stunned audience. The silence was deafening. Ladies and gentlemen, Jimmy said, his voice returning to its professional tone despite the obvious strain. I apologize for what you just witnessed. That's not the kind of show we run here, and it's not the kind of behavior we tolerate. The audience erupted in supportive applause, clearly appreciating Jimmy's handling of an impossible situation. We're going to take a quick commercial break, Jimmy continued. And when we come back, we'll have some music to hopefully end this show on a better note. As the cameras cut away, Jimmy remained standing on the stage, shaking his head in disbelief. The crew members looked equally stunned, many of them having never witnessed anything quite like what had just unfolded. In the years since that infamous night, the incident has become legendary in television history. It serves as a perfect example of how fame and success can corrupt someone's sense of basic human decency, and how even the most patient professionals have their limits. The entire confrontation lasted less than 15 minutes, but it revealed everything you need to know about the difference between genuine artistry and entitled celebrity behavior. While Jimmy maintained his professionalism throughout the ordeal, Miley showed her true colors in the most public way possible. So, what do you think? Was Jimmy right to have Miley removed from the show, or should he have tried harder to de-escalate the situation? Drop a comment below and let me know your thoughts.